Welcome to the International Symposium for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. This symposium is organized on the occasion of the commemoration of the 75 years of the International Association of Legal Science. We are honored and pleased to welcome you here today. We invite the President of the International Association of Legal Science, Professor Dr. Elina, to deliver her opening remarks.
I'm very happy, thank you. I'm very happy to be here, honored, and moved. So, they are the president of the Comparative Legal Research Foundation. We are director of Istanbul University Center of Comparative Law. Dear colleague, dear Halil, we are colleagues of the Executive of the National Association of Legal Science. Dear colleagues, dear students, dear all, and we are very happy to be here, and we are very grateful for the hospitality and the beautiful reading, and about an extra beautiful topic, probably, or threatening. So about artificial intelligence and the law is something that has conquered our lives somehow, and that has issues, very powerful issues about in many sectors of life. Okay. Say some things about that without risking damaging the speeches of so many colleagues and beautiful speeches. I'm certain about that. So artificial intelligence can be very useful in many sectors that support students with special educational needs. And also risks in that. It can help, it can create smart robotics. Big data, it creates blockchain, which has been in our life. Yeah, okay. I thought I may speak loud, so I was not worried. And so, blockchain, these are groundbreaking technologies. These were groundbreaking technologies. Everything changes so fast. A new age in the human history, or the fourth industrial revolution, as it is called. So there are three types of artificial intelligence, and perhaps my colleagues will correct me. Generally speaking, weak artificial intelligence, or artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence. They can reinforce each other. So we see many differences between the laws. For example, in copyright, for which there will be a whole panel, so there are artificial intelligence created works where no copyright is recognized in USA or European Union, and artificial intelligence assisted works. About artificial intelligence created works, I said already that in the European Union and in USA there is no copyright, but in UK, for example, they have invented somehow a computer-generated works regime. So artificial intelligence programmer gets copyright on the machine's output. So the human authorship becomes algorithmic authorship. And Japan has a similar strategy with a commercial impact. Works that have a significant economic impact will be granted protection. We very often see that commercial issues are first line. So in European Union, through all the issues of artificial intelligence has given the floor to many discussions and many writings, and they are trying to control the risk that perhaps it generates, not perhaps, sometimes it is certain. So I brought some phrases or paragraphs that have been written in platforms and in Word documents of the European Union, which say, while most AI systems pose limited to no risk and can contribute to solving many societal changes, certain artificial intelligence systems create risks that we must address to avoid undesirable outcomes. For example, it is often not possible to find out why an artificial intelligence system has made a decision or prediction and taken a particular action. So it may become difficult to assess whether someone has been unfairly disadvantaged, such as in a hiring decision or in an application for a public benefit scheme. There are artificial intelligence systems which threaten the safety and the rights of people and are prohibited. Such systems are those that can cause, for example, harmful manipulation, exploitation of vulnerabilities, etc. There are other AI systems which are considered high risk because they can cause serious risks to health, safety, or fundamental rights. About fundamental rights, again, we shall have a panel. So those may be, among others, AI solutions used in educational institutions in robot-assisted surgery, something very useful, in recruiting employers in law enforcement, something that interests us a lot, that may offend people's fundamental rights in migration, asylum, and border control, management, etc. Those high risks are subject to strict obligation. There are other AI systems which are of limited risk, and other that have minimal or no risk at all. So, let me not delay the speeches of the eminent speakers. Let me once again say how happy and honored I am as the president of the International Association of Legal Science, and I thank all my colleagues with which we have a great team, and we have made our best to organize a conference which we hope that will be very interesting to you. Thank you.
We thank Professor Dr. Elina MOUSTAIRA for her remarks. We invite President of the Rona Serozan Comparative Legal Research Foundation, Attorney Fuat TOPDEMİR, to deliver his remarks.
Sayın International Association of Legal Science Başkanı, değerli akademisyenler ve katılımcılar.
Distinguished President of the International Association of Legal Science, Honorable Dean, esteemed academics and participants.
UNESCO bünyesinde faaliyet gösteren International Association of Legal Science ile İstanbul Üniversitesi Karşılaştırmalı Hukuk Merkezi'nin birlikte düzenledikleri yapay zeka ve hukuk konulu uluslararası konferansa hoş geldiniz.
It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this international conference on artificial intelligence and law, jointly organized by the International Association of Legal Science, operating under the auspices of UNESCO and the Istanbul University Comparative Law Center.
Vakfımızın mütevellisi ve International Association of Legal Science'ın Türk Milli Komitesi Genel Sekreteri Sayın Profesör Doktor Emrehan İnal, bu konferansı vakfımıza duyurduğunda kendisine bu konferansın ortağı olarak katılmaktan vakıf olarak memnuniyet duyacağımızı bildirdik.
When Professor Dr. Emrah Ünal, a trustee of our foundation and the Secretary General of the Turkish National Committee of the International Association of Legal Science, informed us about this conference, we expressed our delight to participate as a partner foundation in this conference.
Kendisine Rona Serozan Karşılaştırmalı Hukuk Araştırmaları Vakfı olarak teşekkür ediyoruz.
We would like to extend our sincere thanks to him for this opportunity on behalf of the Rona Serozan Foundation for Comparative Legal Studies.
Çağımızda önemli bir gelişme olan yapay zekanın hukukla ilişkisi ve bu ilişkinin geleceğiyle ilgili olarak bu konferansı düzenledikleri için IALS yöneticilerini ve İstanbul Üniversitesi Hukuk Fakültesi Karşılaştırmalı Hukuk Merkezi'ni kutluyoruz.
We also congratulate the leadership of the IALS and the Istanbul University Faculty of Law's Comparative Law Center for organizing this event, which addresses one of the most significant developments of our time, the relationship between artificial intelligence and the law and the prospects that this relationship holds for the future.
Bu konferansta Rona Serozan Vakfı olarak yer almak, vakfımızın kurucusunun vakfın kuruluş senedinde belirttiği amaca tamamen uymaktadır. Zira vakfımızın amacı kısaca şöyle belirlenmiştir.
Taking part in this conference as the Rona Serozan Foundation fully aligns with the purpose defined by our founder in the foundation's deed of establishment. For our foundation's objectives have been set as follows.
Ulusal ve uluslararası düzeyde hukuk araştırmalarında bulunmak, bu gibi araştırmaları teşvik etmek, desteklemek ve geliştirmek.
To conduct, encourage and promote legal research at both national and international levels.
Çağdaş, demokratik, sosyal hukuk devletine yakışan bir hukuk düzeninin oluşmasına katkıda bulunmak.
To contribute to the establishment of a legal order worthy of a modern, democratic and social state governed by the rule of law.
Ülke hukukunun Avrupa Birliği'nin hukukuna uyum sağlama sürecine, özellikle Avrupa Birliği'nin kazanımlarına ayak uydurmak sürecine yardımcı olmak.
To assist in the harmonization of Turkish law with that of the European Union, particularly in adapting to the achievements and standards of the European Union.
Vakfımız bu amaçlar doğrultusunda her yıl ödüllü bilimsel makale yarışmaları ve konferanslar düzenlemekte, yurt içinde ve yurt dışında doktora ve doçentlik çalışmaları yapan akademisyenlere karşılıksız burs vererek hukuk araştırmalarını teşvik etmekte ve desteklemektedir.
In pursuit of these aims, our foundation organizes annual scholarly competitions and conferences, awards prizes for outstanding academic work. It encourages and supports legal research by providing non-repayable scholarships to academics pursuing doctoral and associate professor studies, both domestically and internationally.
Bu konferansın düzenlenmesinde ortak olmamız işte bu amaca yönelik olup vakfedenin iradesine ve arzusuna uymaktadır.
Our partnership in organizing this conference is therefore a direct reflection of the will and vision of our founder.
Konferansın başarılı geçeceğine ve gelecekte bu konuda yapılacak çalışmalara ışık tutacağına olan inancımızla hepinize saygılar sunuyoruz.
We are confident that this conference will be a success and will illuminate further research and discussions in this crucial field. With these thoughts, I extend my sincere respect and warm regards to you all.
We thank Attorney Fuat for his contribution. We invite the Director of the Istanbul University Center of Comparative Law, Professor Dr. Halil AKKANAT, to deliver his opening remarks.
Distinguished colleagues, esteemed guests, our professors, our students, our friends from all over the world, welcome to our university and to this symposium. It's truly a pleasure to see you all here. scholars, regulators, and practitioners joining us in Istanbul for 2 full days of comparative dialogue. We meet at a remarkable moment, one where empirical realities are moving faster than our familiar legal intuitions. Across industries, nearly 4 in 5 companies now report using generative AI, yet only about 1% describe their systems are truly mature. So yes, adoption is high, but institutional capability still lags behind. And that gap, right there, is where law and governance must go to work. Markets are moving earth. Enterprises are projected to invest around $307 billion in AI solutions next year, almost 69 billion of that in generative AI alone. These are experimental budgets. They are commitments that will shape our infrastructures, our labor markets, and how legal risk is allocated. Public institutions are moving too. In 2024, US federal agencies issued 59 AI-related regulations. Across 75 countries, legislative mentions of AI rose by over 20% year over year. There's a 9-fold increase since 2016. And in Europe, the EU AI Act entered into force on 1st August 2024. It will phase in over the next 2 years, recalibrating compliance, standard settings, and enforcement across the Union. Meanwhile, in Strasbourg, the Council of Europe's Framework Convention on AI, the world's first binding international treaty on artificial intelligence, opened for signature on 5th September 2024, and has already drawn early support from key jurisdictions, including the United States and the United Kingdom. And yes, the practice of law is already feeling the strain. Courts have begun sanctioning AI-related missteps, including briefs containing fabricated citations. Since mid-2023, US courts have recorded at least 95 such incidents, more than half of them this year alone. The messages couldn't be clearer. Professional responsibility, verification, and explainability are not optional at once, they are the rule of law in action. Governments are experimenting as well. A recent OECD analysis of 200 public sector AI projects found that 57% target automation or service tailoring, 45% suffered decision making and forecasting, and 30% focus on accountability and anomaly detection. But despite all the hype, results remain uneven. Many initiatives share on data governance, evaluation, and capacity, precisely where comparative legal method can make a difference. Against the backdrop, our program is designed to connect evidence, institutions, ethics. Today we begin with general aspects and fundamental rights, then we move to civil law and copyright, where issues of liability, explainability, and creativity meet the doctrines of risk allocation and exception. Tomorrow we will take up ethical issues and transdisciplinary and translational challenges, because safe, human-centric AI will not come from doctrine alone. It requires design, auditing, and organizational accountability. Let me highlight 3 anchors for our discussions. First, from disclosure to results. Let's judge AI governance by outcomes, lower error rates, audited bias, reproducible tests, real remedies, not by white or paper. Second, from capability to capacity. Adoption is racing ahead, institutions are slower. We need validated tools, testing and record-keeping standards, procurement with audit rights, and clear professional guidance for AI-assisted practice. Third, from talking about the risk to allocating it. As investments grows, law must determine who carries which risks, under what standards and with what remedies, backed by courts able to distinguish tool error from process failure and organizational negligence. This year also marks the 75th anniversary of International Association of Legal Science, a timely reminder that comparative law thrives when it meets real change with humility and disciplined practice. So on behalf of Istanbul University and all our partners, thank you for being here. Let these 2 days be a model of constructive debate and may our discussions translate safeguards into real accountability. Once again, welcome and have an inspiring symposium. Thank you very much.
We thank Professor Dr. Halil for his contribution. Now we begin the first session titled General Aspects. We invite the session chair, Professor Dr. Ergun ÖZSUNAY, and our speakers, Professor Dr. Altan ÇAKIR, Associate Professor Dr. Brian FLANAGAN, and Emeritus Professor Dr. Sjef to deliver their presentations.
Therefore, dear foreign friends, foreign colleagues, my dear colleagues from the University of Istanbul, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, it is a professional pleasure for me to chair this morning, the first session this morning. We have, as seen in the program, 3 presenters. And as far as you notice, each presenter has just 20 minutes. Personally, I am not accustomed and I don't want to interrupt the presentation. Therefore, I kindly request the presenters to follow these instructions. So, I am only one of the beginners of artificial intelligence. I dealt with artificial intelligence on the occasion of the EU regulation 2024/1689, if I'm not wrong. And so I don't know more than this regulation. So it would be a pleasure for me to listen several aspects of AI. So let us begin with our first presenter. This is Professor Altan ÇAKIR, and he would present his paper on the age of disruption, artificial intelligence applications from academia to the business world. So you have the floor, just 20 minutes.
Hi everybody. So I'm Altan. So I would like to really thank you to invite me to here, Professor Rona and all these things. So since I have 20 minutes, so I have to cover a lot of things. So I'm just going to start with my talk. I think we're going to discuss a couple of videos. I have some couple of videos. I don't know. I hope it's going to work. We'll see. But basically, we should concentrate on a couple of subjects. One of them is data. And then the other one is just real-time data analytics, advanced analytics, and then AI and generative AI. These are not only in the same treatment, but we have to understand step by step each of those. So who am I? I think I'm responsible for many things, including NGO. We have one Turkish artificial intelligence platform in Turkey. I'm the co-chair of this platform. So I'm the head of the data science and analytics department. And I'm also the chair of this data engineering and analytics in ITU, and many more. But I think this is another things. The Marvin Minsky, what you see as a code, it's always one of the person which we really like in the computer science. Actually, this is what he said in 2016. This is like we have to do our minds is the best. But actually what we also claimed recently, just what we have to do in these recent developments, we have to do this collective work together against this technological development, together with regulations. But of course, everything starts in principle, in the core, it starts with the scientific thought in an application. First, I will show you a couple of slides. It will be complicated, okay? But try to imagine what we are doing. This is the techniques what we have do in 2004 when I was doing my PhD in Germany and Switzerland. So there is like experiments. In experiments, so you do lots of measurements, electronics and devices, and then these devices generate lots of data. And then the people just asking these questions, how can I really deal with this data, and then in a real-time nature. So this was the first idea, what they built in Switzerland, in Geneva. And then this is how big is the experiment, and then you can see that there are lots of cables and machines and millions of electronics, and then you can really collect this data. So what we have to understand from that perspective, in engineering at that time, so basically they try to deal with this automation, which is coming from the 70s, but in the frontier level, and then it reached to the conclusion that how to deal with these extreme operations of data in real-time analytics. If you just consider when Amazon is appeared, 2006, when these global inventions just appeared in 2004, and all the other inventions, including all the big players at the moment, from China to USA, I think just appear at that time, and then we sort of basically see what's happening. So what this detector does is, you can imagine that something happened, so this is a proton-proton collision inside, you take a picture, and then you just try to understand this picture, what is referring in the understanding of the nature. So what you see is this complicated picture, there are lots of tracks, the lines, and then the right hand side you can see that you can see some tracks, these tracks referring something, okay? So basically this, how does it look like, how complicated is the environment, but you can say, okay, I can put some kind of coney there, and then I can measure this, how many of tracks, and then I can get such a kind of plot. Okay. This is the basic logic. Maybe you may think that this is difficult, but it's not. But you can see that some colorful lines in the right corner just show you like how can you really classify or cluster of all the algorithmic traits coming from whatever it is, and then I can understand from that perspective. Of course, this brings me to just imagine, so we deal with this data and then the understanding of this algorithmic trading is in 2006, even before. But this basically puts some kind of technological breaking point, and then the people just starts to understanding about some structures. So let me try. I think it will not work, I guess. Okay, this is basically it's from 2011. It's not running, but so keeping in mind time. So you see from the football matches, it's they invented in 2010 because there's like this is the time. Again, there are some lines that you can see in the real time. So basically, you deal with building of lines in 2006. Of course, you can deal with these lines very easily in industrial lines. And the same things in the smart cities. So in smart cities, so you can really measure. You just put one camera. This is also invented in 2013, I think. And then you can see that all the lines in one European cities, so you can really measure these all pedestrian, how they work, how do they really accumulate in the corresponding area, and then how can really understand about the traffic and then the pedestrian, the interactions in the real-time nature that you can really measure this data. The other things is of course in Istanbul. So what about your social media traffic? I was coming here today the morning by metro. I just noticed that everybody using the social media. It's really it's interesting. But just see that you can measure everything in the real time, and then you can ask these really questions. So where should I go? Where do I drink coffee? Where is the meeting? For example, this is in Istanbul University. You can ask directly these questions to this corresponding data. Just imagine in scientific, we already solved this problem by billion of points. So it's not a deal with like 15 million people in real. So you should always imagine from that perspective. So that brings me to this data challenge for artificial intelligence. According to you, in the left-hand side, the structured data, basically all the companies, all traditional approaches, they use this data, which is already, they can handle it. So what is the problem? The problem is in the right-hand side, this unstructured data. You're talking, you're generating some pictures, and then you're making some, I'm just generating some words. So that brings you to whenever you deal with all of them in the industrial point of view, and then right now it's also in science. So basically you can really get some kind of benefits, and then you can go really in the further depth. So that brings me to, within the 5 minutes, to this my AI definition. Of course, in AI, at least from my perspective, we have to define it two ways. One is the types. You will hear a lot of words, right? You just say machine learning, deep learning, generative AI, transformer algorithms, and so on and so forth. These are the types, okay? I'm sorry, these are the approaches. So basically we are using algorithms and mathematical techniques, which we are advanced, and then we can use these techniques in the context of approaches. But other things is types, which you also heard a lot of them. So it's like a narrow AI. There's a type of there, general and super intelligence. So what is narrow AI? Just imagine each day you order something from the internet, and then basically you can really predict something what you're going to order a couple of days later. Or which, let's say you order pizza all the time, and I know that you're going to order pizza within a couple of days. So this is just basically a forecast. It's a prediction algorithm. This is what we call is a narrow AI. So you have a unique solution to the one corresponding point. So each point has a different algorithmic traits. Okay? But when you merge them, it's a one singular point. So this is what we generally call is artificial general intelligence. But when the reasoning is coming in the game, and then you can really think about like a human being, this is what we're going to call, we don't know yet, it's the super intelligence. So approaches, what we claim is the artificial intelligence is the main pyramid, and then just below it, starting from the 70s, we have a machine learning algorithm. There include lots of algorithms inside. And then there is a deep learning. This is what we call generally neural net. Okay? This is the report which we published together with Turkish Artificial Intelligence Platform and Google last year. And then we put this, the document, you can see the link in below. And this is prepared for Turkey. If we have time, I can give you more details, but this is published already in USA and Google. So basically, this is the thing, is two different perspectives of AI. In the left-hand side is what I call is the narrow AI. In the right-hand side, what I call is what we experience at the moment, is the GPT and generative AI. So one thing which you may notice in the left-hand side corner is, say, forecasting, classification, and clustering, and optimization. These are the traditional the engineering techniques that we can use for many spatial solutions. But in the right-hand side, now we have a new gamer in the game. So basically, we can really use something with the different techniques. So this brings you to like let's say AI in a nutshell. I think there are lots of buzzwords. That's the reason for today I want to really make these things clear. So first thing is algorithms. So yes, without algorithms we can't do anything. But of course there are techniques that you can tell the algorithms what it's going to do, and then you can use it. And then the second thing is usage and development techniques. What we said, how can I use these forecast algorithms for machine learning or deep learning, and this is what's going to be profit for me. either money or like a scientific solutions. Now, this is democratization tools and applications. I believe that most of you have now these apps and such a kind of solutions like Gemini and GPT or Perplexity. And of course, in scientific applications, I think this is underestimated already what's going on in the behind. Just look at the last 2 years of Nobel Prizes. I think there's AlphaFold. I don't know how many of you know about what's going on in AlphaFold, but this is critical development because they already saw this protein gun, which means they can really treat your all disease and all changes directly with algorithms. This is something really beyond the imagination, but it's going to come more and more. Business intelligence, autonomous systems. When I say autonomous systems, please don't understand only the robots. It's also some computers. They just really communicate to each other in the industrial world that we can really communicate each other. But I think there's some just correlate. But physical robots. So basically, there's understanding about robots. One claim that I can mention. I think this is the things from the 1.5 years ago. All the big venture capitals within the last 2 years, they just really changed their whole organization to the next 5 years to physical robots, which means that we are going to experience lots of robots within a couple of, let's say, not years, in a month. I will show you something at the end of my slides. I think I will prepare for this meeting. I think we already come this taxonomy. So, which means, what should I understand when anyone says AI? I think from left to right, this is going how complicated it is. Left one is predictive AI in data science. This is what you already hear from your companies or many scientific solutions in everyday work. And then the second thing is generative AI. This is what you experience at the end of 2022. And then the third one, with agents, like we always discuss at the moment. Maybe we can have a look. A couple of things, but chatbot is already, it's okay, but AI agents, which means just maybe there were lots of narrow AI solutions, like the 1, 2, 3. Now they communicate with each other and then they can really solve something by themselves without any human intervention. And then decision making, this is what we are heading for, and then smart robots, what we are going to experience within 1 or 2 years. Let's look some academical experience, what is done in an AI. This was like before 2020, and then at that time we were already using some narrow AI solutions for many things. But these things, of course, has changed dramatically in the last 5 years. So let's have a look at the fundamental definitions of AI. You know, when you discuss with any experts, they will always really show you something about mathematics and computer science and such a kind of details. Yes, this is the blue dot, right? This is what we agree. Yes, this is how it starts. But the evolution of the AI, it's coming from the next 2 steps. One is just a system of neuroscience. So how am I really decision-making in my motor neuron cells in my body? There are lots of experiments. One of them is called Blue Brain Project in Switzerland, for example. They started in 2014. I think now they can really mimic like a 10% of the mind's brain at the moment. They can really directly see what's happening in the brain. This is about like a 0.001 of the human brain. So this is something that's really big development in the cognitive science. And then the one final part is also the critical, like a human cognitive systems, which means like how to really make my language is really affected by mathematical understanding. This is the critical questions. But let's continue. I will not go through from this all details, but this is a long class story, but we always concentrate on last 20 years, this is my talk. So this is lots of boom, that I think this was coming, and then this is not a winter anymore. You just see the below, the first AI winter and the second AI winter, so it's not winter anymore. So that's one thing which we should. So let's discuss about how these things have changed in the last 20 years. Look, like handwriting recognition, just remember your tablets in 2010. So we were really excited, like we were writing something like a 1 or 2, and then the system was understanding about the electronically. So this was actually the first attempt to go at the human level of the AI, and then the second attempt, speech recognition and image recognition, which I showed you in the first part of my talk. But one thing which really surprised all of us, actually this is directly related to the legal tech, the reading comprehension and language understanding. So this was like a big jump in a 2017 paper, and then they solved this issue by mathematically, very fundamentally. So this is actually what we said. This is the how this big hype is not hype anymore. Now we're living with this generative AI. You can see these hypes, the machine learning, computer vision, and pattern recognition, all the developments like publications in the last 20 years. But one thing which I want to really insist to show you things that how this industry starts in 2014 to make big investments. Just look this peak, and then what is really to see that the academic developments and then the investments just dropping very high. So it's not only the Turkey, so this is a global issue because the increasement of like the investment of the industry in AI just increased. So basically they just really removed all the, let's say, the exceptional academicians and then all the experts from the academia, and then academia is not really give enough funding to these investigations in the back. So that's the reason why we see lots of big companies with the AI models to just show up in these purple lines. And then the second thing is, of course, now we have a new gamers so coming from the other side of the world, from the China universities. So they are really working with the government, the strategy for just making these things more, how to say, visible. Okay, so this is, I will skip this one. This is the paper which just only remember this one if you don't know. This is the paper which is called Attention is All You Need. This is how it's changed everything. Actually, the authors, from Google authors, they just impressed from the song from the All You Need is Love. That's the reason they call this Attention is All You Need. Because all the constructions, what is done in the last 20 years or 50 years, I think they merged and then now we just experience something. I'm not able to show these videos, but actually also I don't have the time. But just imagine one you see up and left hand side, these are the just sentence. They can really play with the sentence and then all documents like a mathematical game, they can really generate a lot of things. Now we're in the purple line. Now we are going the direction of the autonomous AI, but we are really shifting in the direction of the physical robots. This is the current situation in the context of the products. But just look from the up and the middle side. What you see in this like a pale gray letters, these are all open source development. Maybe we can discuss these things another time. But each of those we should really spend some time and how these things are just coming to the game up to now, just you can imagine. This is my last couple of minutes. I want to show you that the current situation. Just imagine, I think if you do this video generation or like a speech recognition, maybe just itself is not meaning something directly in low tech, legal tech, or finance and technological developments. But what we do at the moment is what they call it, in all day life, the multimodals. This is what they call it, not large multimodal, not this large multimodal, not LLM, large language models. Multimodals means that you merge them all is a one single step. Okay? So that's the reason I just put under the pencil because of the name. So basically, this is domain expert, which let's say the lawyers and the legal persons and data and AI management together will be a big jump in the system. I think what we see there's a paradigm shift from up to down. I think from the 60s to 70s, 80s, this command line, this generate this old algorithmic developer or software developers. Just imagine 70s, this old industrial revolution of 3.0. And then also in our time, with all of them, we are experiencing point and click. But I think the next generation will experience by just talking and then saying something, and then they are going to experience everything from that perspective. My final slide, which I especially prepared for today, I never give this information before, so let's take for today in the public. So I think the recent discussion in the USA, and I think it's also in some part in Germany, they discuss about what is AI epoch. AI epoch means like an AI time. I have a linear time, let's say 1 year, like 12 months, but there are lots of developments happening by inventions in more than one per year. So that brings you to different timing about what I'm going to experience in the next 12 years, depending on this AI epoch time. So let me give you some kind of explanation. I mean, these are the, let's say, well-studied things, but I will just make it short. So we experienced 8 different inventions in this year. So basically, we have 12 months divided by 8. It's about like 1.5%. So this is what we're going to say. So the framework is 1 calendar year of, let's say, human time. It's about like about 1.5 times the AI time. This is about like 3 times. This is called like a 2.8 times. What I mean is when you wait, let's say, 2 years as a company without doing anything, including the university, so basically you're basically 8 times behind your competitor. So this is something which we have to really like a numerical representation of. If I wait 1 month about do this investment or do these changes in my life or in a company or corporation, so what will happen? You should always remember this one, like 2.2 over 1.5. This is the time that what you do is in terms of AI time, because 1 year, like almost 3 years in 2.8 times in an AI time. So this is something interesting. Next year maybe we'll see like, I don't know, another 10 development. Maybe these terms can be changed. But what we experience at the moment is not exponential anymore. It's not like a moonwalk. It's more than an exponential. So this is something what we have to pay attention. I completed my talk, so for our foreign guests, but this is I asked Gemini like just write a kind of poem, like Orhan Veli, because we are in a really important university, it's the Istanbul University. This is what it's written. I think even nice. I don't know. They asked me to write such a kind of poem. I think I'm not able to make it. So one final word is, I mean, the technology is always exciting, but always we need, my opinion, legal text and law rules and regulations, because I think the technology developers, they never stop. But in the meantime, so we are going in a direction of like how this sustainability and the Earth planet is what they say, like a blue dot, the small blue dot. I think we have to work together and then to see first how we use this technology for good, let's say AI for good or technology for good, and then just after how we can really make this planet much better and together with the human being. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, dear guests, I would like to thank Professor ÇAKIR for his presentation. As we see, his paper very informative and very well structured, so we learn a lot in the age of AI, let us say, AI time or AI epoch, as he explained to us. So we learn types of and approaches to AI and all fundamentals and trends in this area. Now, the second, I would like to introduce the second presenter, Associate Professor Dr. Brian FLANAGAN. He would present a paper on AI as law clerk, legal aptitude, public acceptability, and professional limitations. So, yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for having me here. I'm excited to get to talk to you. As you know, my topic is the AI law clerk, and by that I mean an AI program that will help the judge decide a legal case or to make orders in a legal case. And there are two ways we can probably think of a law clerk. One is an additional human, the work of an additional human that the AI might provide, and that's the way it's typically understood. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to suggest an alternative approach to conceptualizing assistance from an AI in a courtroom. So in the talk itself, I'm going to dip my toe in the debate, the intensifying debate about the propriety of using AI for judicial decision making. And then I'm going to have a look at the benefits or the case in favor of AI legal aptitude. And then I'm going to look at the more skeptical considerations that you might take into account. And I'm going to offer a conjecture as to why AI is problematic in terms of fabricating legal authorities and legal sources as we have found in the last number of years. Okay, so this is just a kind of a taste of the debate. You can see there are fairly radically opposed positions developing here. There's a comment there from Professor Lawrence Lessig speaking about how AI, he's thinking about generative AI, how this will perhaps allow us to finally deliver on law's promise. And there are certainly very optimistic takes from academics on what AI can do here, which is what they think. But equally then there's a much more skeptical viewpoint, and you can see there that Professor Natalie Smuha, she's talking about how the foundations of our democracy, of our so maybe now we'll see how AI could affect and compromise our democracy. So that's the other point of view, and certainly there are some grounds for both of these attitudes, and that's what I'm going to look at now. I'm going to start by asking whether the skeptics have perhaps overlooked some of the developments that Altan has described there since 2022. I think things have changed for law and AI, and so I'm just going to talk a little bit about legal interpretation. So when robots or when computers have interpreted texts, up until quite recently, they have been very literal in how they approach things. So they have a decision tree, and they apply that tree regardless. More recently, with machine learning, AIs have been found to be able to learn unspecified elements of relevance from a set of cases. So given a set of cases, they'll spot things that aren't explicitly written about what's important about those cases, and they'll be able to apply those to future cases in which those considerations occur. So that was a development that occurred about 10, 15 years ago, and that was significant. But humans don't interpret the law like that. And humans are not literalists, and they're not confined to a certain set of learned considerations. So humans, when they interpret a law, they will look at both the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, and they'll do that even if it's an entirely new case. Right? So they'll be able to recognize where the letter of the law and the spirit indicate different outcomes, and they'll be able to vary their response and their interpretation of the law according to whether they think that the letter is more important or the spirit is more important when they diverge. That's something that humans have always done, and it's something that computers have never done up until the last couple of years. And so a few colleagues and I decided to test in a more systematic way whether AI, and by that I mean things like ChatGPT, whether they are able to spot the conflict between letter and spirit and act accordingly in entirely new cases that they've never seen before. And so for that, then we came up with hard cases. Right? So these are situations where spirit and letter diverge, like in the image there. So this is a vignette of a hard case. And so this is your situation where there's a restaurant, and the rule says no dogs in the restaurant, and the purpose is to stop pets from distracting the diners. But the situation is that someone approaches the restaurant and they have a guide dog, and it's perfectly well behaved, it's highly trained, and it's a dog, but it's not going to cause any distraction in the restaurant. And the question is whether the dog can be allowed in or not. And a human response to this will sometimes go with text and say no, and sometimes it will say yes, the dog can go in. And so we know this from previous research with humans, that in a hard case, they start to vary and the certainty breaks down. And the question was whether ChatGPT would replicate a human response to these sorts of cases when given them at scale. And so when we looked at this and we tested humans and we tested AI, we found that that is exactly what seemed to be happening. Okay, so now this diagram's a little bit complicated, but it's simple once you take it step by step. The most important thing there is the human category. It's a row that goes straight across the middle. This is how humans interpret hard cases. Okay, so, and this is what we found before. So this is not only expected, this is what we expect humans to do. And you can see the little pattern there when you're looking at the humans. So there's text and there's purpose. And you look at the extremes then. So at the very bottom you get people agreeing that when text and purpose are violated, when letter and spirit are violated, then, or when neither of them are violated, there is no rule violation there. So that's what's happening at the very bottom one. At the very top one on the far side, you see the red up at the very top, that's when both text and purpose are violated. People agree then that the rule is violated. So they're easy cases, right? There's no problem. That's when you bring an unruly dog into the restaurant, right? You're breaking the rule, there's no question. But when you don't bring any animal into the restaurant, you're not breaking the rule, there's no problem. There's no question about it. The difficult case is when you bring in the trained guide dog, or when you bring in a monkey who's unruly, but isn't a dog. Does the rule forbid the monkey to come in? These are hard cases, and these are the sort of cases we see in the middle two rows under old vignettes and new vignettes. And you see that this uncertainty develops in the human response. So they don't know whether to say whether or not they're breaking the rule or not. They disagree, there's confusion. Okay, so there's these midpoints here. And what we wanted to know was whether an LLM or a ChatGPT, we tried a bunch of models here, you can see there's Llama and Gemini and Claude as well. We wanted to see whether they would show the same pattern of response to these hard cases where you have this divergence. And that's exactly what we found. Okay, so you can see if you look at the other rows, how they mimic, to a greater or lesser extent, the pattern in the human rows. Okay, and so that statistical convergence with the human response was assigned to us that LLMs have a new level of aptitude at legal interpretation that we haven't seen before. Now, the convergence isn't perfect, but one thing that's interesting is that the humans on the new vignettes, these are brand new ones we came up with for this experiment that the internet hasn't seen before. Under the new vignettes, humans become more propositivist, right? They give a little bit more weight to spirit than they do in the old vignettes. And that's exactly what the LLMs do when exposed to these new vignettes, vis-a-vis their exposure to the old vignettes as well. So there's a level of tracking there, which we were also a bit impressed by. And we think that ability isn't something that's been captured in the general academic analysis of this question. So then just to move on a little bit to kind of a different point of attack, a different approach here. One is the question of the aptitude. The other aspect of the case for using AI in courtrooms is that there seems to be an element of public acceptability. So we ran a nationally representative survey experiment in Kenya where there's a lot of interest in digital reform of the judicial infrastructure. And we asked people about a vignette, a scenario, where a judge was relying on legal research or advice generated by an AI program. And we asked people whether or not they felt that that was a legitimate decision. So the decision that the judge reaches by relying on the AI, would you regard that as legitimate? And we gave them hard cases, right? And we gave in one case, the judge goes with the text, and in the other case, the judge goes with the spirit. So you can see there the sort of scenario, right? So in one case, Martin gets punished because he rode his motorcycle into the mall to help someone out, and in the other case, he does not. And we wanted to see how people would respond when we varied the question of whether the advice was coming from a human legal assistant or whether it was coming from an AI. And so when we did that, then what we found that there was no statistical difference in people's rating of the legitimacy of the decision. Okay, so you can see there that on your left, you're finding the ratings for the situation where Martin gets away with it, and he can ride his motorcycle in and out to help the person, and that's fine. And when you're looking at that decision, people are saying that when supported by an AI, in fact, the judge's decision is even more legitimate than when it's supported by a human. And then it's the opposite is the case, but only slightly when you're looking at the case where Martin gets in trouble for bringing the motorcycle in. And overall, you take them both together, there's no statistical difference in how people are treating this level of assistance, be it from AI. So, in a sense then, and this isn't dispositive of the philosophical case for AI in the courtroom at all, but it's indicative that policymakers could be pushing out an open door here in terms of people's acceptance of new procedures which might allow for greater judicial efficiency, which rely on the use of AI assistance in the courtroom. So the case might be that you could decide more cases and make justice more accessible if you introduced this sort of computer into the courtroom, and this sort of result would suggest that maybe people might not be opposed to that. So that's the kind of pro case that I don't think is perhaps given enough attention. The case against AI in decision-making capacity in law is better known. And I'm not going to say anything particularly new here. There are notorious documented problems. The main one, I suppose, in terms of notoriety, is hallucination. So this is where the AI fabricates a legal authority, just invents a legal authority, a precedent, or whatever it might be, or summarizes a case and does so, completely the wrong way. So there are various studies which show the frequency at which this happens. It's not terribly low, right? So the frequency isn't, is probably enough to be concerning, and that seems to be possibly an intractable feature of the LLM. The other issue that has arisen in law as well, and I'm sure elsewhere, is brittleness. So this is a reference to the phrasing of the question that you ask the LLM. So you might say it in one way, you might say it in another way. You might say, well, how does the law apply to Martin's case? Or you might ask it, well, what sorts of legal considerations apply to Martin's case? So there might be just two different phrasings you could use. It wouldn't matter to a human listening to which phrasing you were offering it. It would mean the same thing, but it could have a huge impact on the LLM's response. So we're saying that it's brittle because we're saying that the response you're getting depends to some extent on immaterial factors, such as the phrasing of the question. So that is, as a recent paper indicating, that's a problem possibly in law as well. The other two issues, de-skilling. This is where you rely on it, you lose your skills, or where you avoid the difficult work of writing a legal opinion and therefore miss some intellectual hint or red flag that you're going in the wrong direction. Those problems apply to LLMs in the courtroom, but they apply equally to humans. Right? So if you're relying on a human assistant, you might equally become de-skilled or have false confidence in an act. But the first problem, hallucination and brittleness, they do seem to be indicative of an LLM problem. So I've been trying to understand why that is. Why, on the one hand, LLMs seem to be so intuitive, so like a human in how they can do things and how they interpret the law, and on the other hand, how they can do something that is just totally weird for a human. Like, a human may or may not be very good at law, but if they're reliable, they're not going to just invent legal authorities. Right? That's just very unlike a human as an assistant. And so, I return to what computer scientists are telling us about what LLMs are, and they tell us that they predict the most likely next token, which in language is going to be a word or a piece of punctuation or something like that. And so I've been trying to get my head around why do things go right and why do things go wrong, and my conjecture is that when you ask an LLM a legal question, that what it effectively is doing is asking itself, well, what is the most relevant thing that the law could say here? As opposed to answering the question that a human would answer, which is, what does the law say here? Now, the answer to these questions will often overlap. And they'll overlap in hard cases. They'll overlap in new hard cases, never been seen before, where both the human and the AI will identify intuitively exonerating or incriminating circumstances. But sometimes they will not overlap, right? They will diverge. And they will diverge in easy cases and hard cases alike. Because what's most relevant might not be what the law is. And so you get these weird answers sometimes that you would never get from a human who's doing the job. And what that suggests, I think, and I've become more skeptical of AI over time as I've thought about this, but what I think it suggests is that when you ask an AI a legal question or a piece of, or to do some legal research for you, you are, in a sense, hoping for the best. You're hoping that the answer to the question of what is the most relevant thing the law could say will, in this case, correspond with the answer to the question of what the law does say. And you have no real way of knowing in advance how likely that is. And so to me, that suggests you're taking a bit of a risk when you're asking an LLM to do that. And this corresponds with something somebody said in a focus group we did of the UK judiciary. So we had a bunch of judges, spanning the hierarchy. Last January, we were asked them questions about AI and what AI was doing, and one of them said this. He said, so they did a bit of kind of personal research on generative AI, even at that point, and they said, well, it's quite dangerous because if you didn't realise, you'd know the answer was wrong. So if you knew the answer, you know it was wrong, but it looked very plausible. So the AI made up citations that didn't exist. It clearly knew the case in which the answer was to be found, but it summarised that case completely contrary to what the decision was, and it gave the opposite answer in language which it had very obviously taken from the case. Just yesterday, I was sent an article from the Washington Post which reported on an interaction between the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee in the US, Charles Grassley, and a number of judges in the US who had retracted their judgments or their court orders over the summer. And they had done so because weird things had occurred in the judgments. And they refused to give any explanation as to why they were retracting the judgments, and this was brought to the attention of the Senate, and the Senate was interested, for whatever reason it was interested, and it decided to make an example of these judges, and it wrote to them, and asked them to explain why those judgments were withdrawn. The suspicion obviously being that ChatGPT had been used in their formulation and in their drafting. And yesterday, it was reported that the judges had accepted that they had indeed used ChatGPT and that they were, very sorry and that they wouldn't do it again and so forth. But one of the things struck me is that one of the judges said, I'm very busy, which he is, and, I'm doing my best. And this mistake was unforeseeable. And it was unforeseeable. If you got a clerk, a human clerk in, never would have made something up like that. You didn't see it coming. And that's the jeopardy with the LLM here when it's doing human-like legal assistance. Okay, so, is there an alternative? So here we have AI, thankfully. I'm very grateful it came up with an image for me. And this is where the farmer is asking the sheepdog to herd his sheep by getting it to pilot a drone. And it's problematic. It can't do it as well as a human. It is very enthusiastic. It's tireless. But to herd sheep, you have to let the sheepdog do what it's good at. And maybe when we're asking LLMs to help out our judges, we're asking them to do the wrong things when we say, draft this, give me your recommendation, summarize this case. Maybe we're asking the AI to pilot a drone when we should be putting the AI in the field to run, to do what it is good at. And maybe that's not being quite so human-like. And so this is an example of something an AI can do, an LLM can do, which isn't giving you new text. Okay, so here you have a piece of text, and it's offering you a way of, it's a speed reader, effectively. It's offering you a summary. If you read just the highlighted words there, you will get a summary of what the text is saying. But those words are sliced across sentences, and they're all original. Okay, so it's not generating new text. There's no possibility of hallucination. There's no possibility of brittleness here. And yet you can get the summary that you need to save the time that you need. And so this is possible because the LLM, it's fundamentally a predictive machine. So it's predicting what would happen if you asked it to summarize something. And if you confine it to the words of the thing that is summarized, then this is what you would get. A speed reader, which doesn't give you an abstractive paraphrase, but which can't hallucinate, and which might also save you time. And there are other sorts of developments, other sort of tools along these lines that judges could potentially make use of in the legal context. Right? This is for the legal context. But you can imagine those tools being recalibrated accordingly. Okay, thank you very much.
I would like to thank Mr. Brian FLANAGAN. His paper was rather interesting. He is one of the experts, as far as I see, on artificial intelligence. So we have learned a lot from the public acceptability, legal aptitude and applications from academia to business world. As you see, he expressed the important issues in a changing world. We live now in really in a changing world. This is the world of artificial intelligence. Now, the third presentation deals with by my dear colleague, Professor Dr. Sjef. The topic is rather interesting. Is AI a forbidden tool in legal education?
Thanks so much for sharing research, which I've known about for a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the first two speakers were excellent. And you may wonder why someone with grey hair, retired, is going to talk about this. Let me tell you a little bit about my background, because I need that when I develop my arguments about whether we should use AI in legal education or not. Now, I retired as a law professor at the University of Maastricht, where my area was the development of research and teaching in the area of comparative property law. And at the end, I focused, and I still focus, on all questions regarding data and property, particularly data ownership. So, and I still teach. I still teach at the University of Trento in Italy, I teach in South America. So I come across these developments also as a teacher. But after I retired, I also, for 2 years, became the interim head of the private law department at the University of Amsterdam. I came across this same question, but then as a university administrator. So that's one side. The other side is that I was co-reporter for a project at the European Law Institute about 6-7 years ago, whether a transaction on a blockchain was legally valid or not. If you ask the question now, everyone says, of course it's legally valid, but I was in almost emotional debates with colleagues who said, anything that happens in the digital world is legally irrelevant. Can you imagine that? But that was 6-7 years ago. I heard, let's say, Sjef, probably, I'm sure you know, say 2 years ago, no, the world is changing. We as judges will use AI. I'm also involved, again, to explain to you why I'm going to say the things I will be saying. As an advisor to an AI working group of the International Organization of Judicial Enforcement Officers, who are discussing how to use AI in judicial enforcement. And I'm an advisor to a European working group on the use of AI in land registration. The background there is that we're closely together with the Netherlands Land Registry, where 70% of our deeds are dealt with by AI. And finally, in 1985, to give the students an idea, I was in my faculty the second person having an email address. Can you imagine that? And my colleagues at the time looked at me as I was a bit of a weirdo. All right. So it's from those perspectives that I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to discuss various things. Well, what we mean by AI, we already know, but I'll say a few more things. How would AI introduce itself? Show. I will advocate a pragmatic approach. We will have to understand the limits of AI, how it works. Again, I want to repeat that. Why are some educators against? But AI will not completely replace the human mind. It might mimic the human mind, it might come close, but I'm convinced it will not completely replace it. And finally, if we use AI in legal education, the person to teach will have to know about AI. You have to know what is going on. You cannot just say, I don't want to. I've been in debates with colleagues who said, I don't even want to hear from you what AI is. I want my students to do it the way they did it, and then I would say, basically in the 19th century. But those days are over. And we need to know what our students are doing, and I can already tell you one thing. I talked to several colleagues in the Netherlands, but also worldwide. By coincidence, this month I traveled quite a lot for a project. I was in China for teaching, I was in South America, now I'm here. So I talked to colleagues literally all over the world. And what everyone says, and as you can understand in our figures, if whatever we as educators say, 73% of our students will use AI. They will use it. Whether we say you should not, you're not allowed to, they will. So we have to understand that. Yes, judges do funny things with AI, but sometimes also academic authors. And that's a warning to the students already. I already came across an example of a PhD where the whole of the bibliography was fabricated by AI, and we discovered that. Your PhD is then, let me put it mildly, in grave danger. Right, so, okay. Now, how would AI introduce itself? Basically, what I did is, I thought, okay, well, that AI helped me introduce the whole topic. So, well, it would do this. Basically, I got this from, I think, a little program. No, basically, it says what I just said, right? Good afternoon, morning, thank you for being here. All the polite sentences you always use in the presentation. Then, as legal professionals, you've likely heard the term AI used. It's the way a lawyer would introduce the topic. Not someone who is an expert in AI, as our first speaker. Not someone who is an expert in AI and law, as our second speaker, but as an average lawyer interested in the topic who do this. I also asked the AI to find a video for me explaining types of AI. Yeah, I did that. And he says, well, the video is designed for non-technical audiences. Because I said, I need a video for people who are not so very technically versed in this topic. And we don't want too much jargon. We want an overview. So basically, what the AI wrote down was exactly what I wanted to do. So this is not better or worse than what I just said. And in that sense, AI can help you, but you, the organization, the IALS that invited me, you don't want to hear from AI, you want to hear from me. And that, I think, for a lawyer is a crucial point. You want the human to speak, not the machine. And the thing is that when you listen to the technical people, like our first speaker, technical people are so, how to say, taken by the development. I've been chairing mixed working groups of technical people and lawyers. Technical people are so full of what is going on, what might happen, what could happen, that when then a lawyer stands up and says, or maybe not, the lawyer is seen as the person who either doesn't understand what is going on, or is a stumbling block, is a conservative person, and so on. I'll give you one example, just to introduce the rest of what I'm going to say. I was in a meeting at the World Bank with young startups wanting to put the whole of land registration on blockchain. And one of them came to me and said, listen, you guys have this rule that when you possess land long enough, you become the owner. I said, yes. Right, and the moment possession begins is unclear. I said, yes. Then this is a maybe. It's a maybe. Then delete that rule, because I cannot program it. Okay? Well, I can tell you so far that all attempts to put land registration systems in a blockchain frame failed. If they say that there is a blockchain frame, what they mean is that the blockchain is used as a sort of inventory, as an archive. There's a different type. So I've been in debates like this, and still I'm going to argue that we as teachers, as professors, as lecturers should understand more and in depth about what is going on technically, AI, because we are talking to students who use AI in any case, and who will use AI later in legal practice, where it is already used, or sometimes wrongly used. And that is what we should try to avoid. The wrong use of AI by the future generation of lawyers. Now, AI simulates intelligence. You can argue whatever you want to, but to me it simulates. The computer is not a human being, might come close, but it's not us. And so what we see is that the debate about the use of AI, strictly speaking, between those colleagues, and I've been in those debates as well, who reject it as a matter of principle. Always the argument is, students must learn to think independently. Of course they must learn to think independently. That's what academic education is about. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't help them using the tools that they can use in finding sources, in analyzing cases. Help them to find, for instance, well, if you read a foreign text and you use AI to translate it, be aware of the risks. Right? That's much better than that the student thinks, okay, I find something in Finnish, so let's translate it into English, because I'm sure my supervisor does not read Finnish. You never know. So there is a risk there. So let us train our students to use AI, but in a way that is responsible use. So my approach is accept what is happening in legal practice, where they use AI, in preparing cases, although be careful. I've seen recently, I think even last week, an overview of someone who analyzed and used by Lexis and Westlaw in the United States, where in one in six cases, the AI hallucinated, so gave wrong answers. And the most difficult problems there are that the answer is plausible or wrong. It could be right, but it's wrong. So, but anyway, accept that it is used in legal practice. Acknowledge that our students are growing up in this hybrid society. They will work with it. So, let's face it. what we should also avoid is that our students think that the world of AI is it. Then we end up in a situation of the science fiction movie The Matrix. And I use that example very often. In The Matrix, we are, as we are right here now, we are in a dream. In reality, we are just, as humans, connected to machines. We need humans to feed on. But we don't like that idea, so the machines program in our brains to dream of the reality here. We should understand that AI is a type of reality. But there is also the world here, of us human beings. So we need to know what AI can do, what it cannot do. And that is why our first presentation was so really good. I was fascinated by it. I've had discussion with particularly letters about neural networks, and also your presentation, and you're reading old deeds in horrible handwriting, text analysis. Well, nowadays in the Netherlands, those deeds can be read, for instance, and analyzed. I was fascinated by both of you. So we should understand that when we use, or when we try to understand what our students do, that the use of large language models, well, these models know as much as data as we put into them. What we don't put into them, they don't know. They might fabricate, because some of these LLMs are programmed in such a way that they're not allowed to say, no, I don't know. That's even to humans different, to say, I don't know. So, let's have a look at how LLMs analyze the text. And this is not my text again. I asked the AI, I said, well, you know, I have to explain this. Give me a text. Just to show you what AI can do. Well, the AI, when it analyzes text, uses tokens. And here you see the explanation. Again, it's not mine, but here it comes. When there is a mistake in the text, it's my mistake. If I would now be arguing a case, and we already had that also in the Netherlands once, where a court rebuked the lawyer, saying, you quoted cases from our Supreme Court which did not exist. Could you please not do that again? And the court was not friendly in that decision. So it's my responsibility, but still it's AI generally. So tokens are the smallest units of reasoning. And what the AI does, the way it explains itself to me, is the AI says to me, you do not read the whole document at once, you break it down. You read clauses, you read sentences, you read words. And each of these words carries a meaning. And the token, so the tiniest element that the AI will analyze in the text could be, as you can see here, a word, part of a word, com, like the opposite of anti. But you have a contract, but you might have an anti-tract. The AI doesn't know. For us as lawyers, an anti-tract sounds nonsense. But an AI doesn't think in terms of sense or nonsense. So punctuation might be a point. So it processes token by token, like the AI says, like you do when you interpret a statute, clause by clause. And I should add, I have been Deputy Justice in the Appeals Court for 25 years. So I know how decision-making in a courtroom goes. Then I said, okay, well, tell me about the legal perspective. And then the AI said, well, let us draw a parallel. And what you see happening here is a conversation between me and the AI. And when I'm talking to AI, I always remain very polite. And you know, when the information is there, I say thank you. I are really polite. Why? There are studies about that, why people are polite to AI. But if you look at statutory interpretation, the AI says when a judge interprets a law, they focus on individual terms. And that's what you do. Right? You want to understand input of tokens into context, meaning, generate a response. Now the thing here is, and that is, for instance, something that you should explain to students, when you use ChatGPT in the free version, the large language model only can process, I think, about 32,000 tokens. But the ChatGPT that is used by professionals processes more than 190,000 tokens. So we have to explain to students, if you use LLMs, that we know you do, understand the limitations. It's not that every university can do what Oxford does. I understand they made ChatGPT in the biggest version available to everyone. But not many universities can afford that, or want to do it, because they are afraid. This is an example that the AI also produced about how do I analyze a text. Now, given this, given what I explained to you about my background, and given, I'll give you my age, that I'm 71. I'll tell you this. Educators whom I talk to worry about, well, what is the impact of how students look for sources? Will they still look in civil codes? Will they still look at manuals? Will they read a whole chapter, although they only need one paragraph, because they want to know in which context that author wrote the paragraph? Will they find all relevant materials? Or will we only get fabricated papers? That's one. Another that I hear very often. Yes, but if they use AI, they only can think as future legal professionals. Right? Particularly, they cannot act as independent judges. Well, we've heard that it's rational, but this is what my colleagues tell me. It doesn't matter to whom I talk, whether I talk in China, in South America, or in Europe. These are the arguments I hear everywhere. How can we still evaluate students' work? Right? You know, my students in South America will send me papers in 2 weeks' time. Well, I can have them checked for plagiarism. Am I certain that the papers are not really done with AI in such a clever way that even the plagiarism check doesn't work? So, okay, good then. And do we really understand what our students are doing? And here we touch a huge problem. That even my colleagues in their 40s don't understand what is going on. I think they should all be educated by you. Really. So, and also, think of this. What sort of AI do we use as lawyers already? Right? When I write an English text, I use Grammarly to check my English. That's AI. When I have to make a translation quickly, I use DeepLink. But given that I speak several languages, I can check the translation. But I can tell you, DeepLink is not bad. We use AI for research, for looking for sources, summaries, but you have to be careful. I use it, so I started doing my own research, and then I asked the AI, okay, I'm doing research on topic so-and-so, which sources would you recommend me to read? And then I check, did I see those sources as well? And I asked the AI to summarize, to find out sometimes that they summarize Article B, which should be under Title A. Oh, nonsense. So essential for using AI by lawyers and students is the formulation of a prompt. So the question that you ask AI. Last week, I visited a theme park in the Netherlands, which is about fairy tales. And in that theme park, they have a tree, and children can talk to that tree. And, you know, the tree at some point will ask, what's your name? The tree will then say, it's a beautiful name. Do you have a favorite animal? And in fact, I know the programmer behind it. Because the tree is completely guided by AI, and I've seen the prompt. Pages of text. So because the tree has to say, okay, you have to ask this, but not this, and so on. It goes like this. It's not like the old style command lines. It's a story that you put into the prompt. And then at the end you test it, and in case people start saying weird things, the tree is programmed in such a way to say, that's interesting. Now let me tell you a fairy tale. Right? It cuts it off. So prompting, writing the question to the AI is crucial. I think we should train our students in doing that. So tell them what you can do, what you cannot do, and if you want to use AI, this is how to do it. But then we should know it ourselves, right? So I asked the AI, can you help me finding a good example of a prompt? And then what the AI does, it says, absolutely. It's quite convincing itself. Right? And it says, well, think about it. Who, what, why, where, and then they gave an example. And the AI knows, because of all my search questions, my prompts, that I'm a property lawyer. So very cleverly, the prompt is about property law. Can I call that cleverly? Because the word clever means some human instinct. But I would say the AI is clever. Listen, compare the treatment of digital inheritance under EU succession law and Surinamese law. Suriname is the country where I teach in South America. Focus on how each system defines and regulates access to digital assets, social media, cloud storage, cryptocurrencies. After that, the goal is to prepare a clear, accessible presentation for senior legal professionals unfamiliar with digital law, highlight key legislative developments, practical implications, and any gaps or ambiguities in both systems. That's exactly the area in which I'm now working, digital succession. And this is the prompt that AI tells me I should use to question AI about my sources and my research. But in order to do that, we as legal educators, I keep repeating that, must understand this ourselves. And so we need to train the trainers. I got this from AI. In fact, it's an old version of the software. The pictures now are even much better. But that is my message. Don't deny what is happening in the minds of the students. Don't ignore the environment in which they work. Use it, but use it responsibly. And I can give you an example from the University of Rotterdam that I came across, where students, while they write a paper, have to keep an AI logbook. They have to write down, when they use AI, what their prompt is, which type of AI they use, and what the outcome is. They have to send that to their supervisor, let's say in the beginning stage of when they write a paper, and they have to submit the logbook at the end together with the paper. So the university says, we know what you're doing in any case. Use it responsibly, but show it to us. Be transparent. Give us the opportunity to evaluate you in a fair way, because that is not just in our interest because we want to educate you properly, but in your interest as well. Because you need to know things. It's not that the AI needs to know them and you can handle AI. You need to know. I think this is a really good initiative. So I would say, accept what is going on, accept our students' reality, and try to understand it for yourself and use it. Thank you very much.
I would like also to thank my dear colleagues here for this interesting presentation. Now, as far as we see, it is not possible anymore to avoid ourselves from the aspect of artificial intelligence in the world of academic studies. And it is also understood that we need to train the trainees, and we have to learn anymore. We have to learn the meaning, development, and aspects of AI in our scientific and academic studies. On this occasion, I would like to make a short remark. Roughly 40 years before I attended a convention in the Conseil de l'Europe on the use of tape recordings in legal education, and in that conference, one of the participants said, this is a revolution. In fact, when we compare the development between tape recorders, use of tape recorders in legal education, and now the use of artificial intelligence in legal education, as you see, we are really living in a very rapidly changing world. I would like again to thank all three of my colleagues for their presentations, and I am opening the discussion. Regarding the discussions, I would like to demand the attendees to raise their questions shortly to whom, and before they raise their questions, to identify themselves, their names, their occupations, institutions, etc. At the same time, it is also possible to make very short remarks related to the presentations of our three distinguished colleagues. So I am opening the discussions. Okay, Cordero, let us begin with Cordero.
First of all, I would like to congratulate Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate all our speakers. It was very interesting and very, I would say, seductive, of course. And of course, this has raised many questions. This is what it's about, and let me focus on the questions that I would like to try to highlight in answers. The first one is, of course, ÇAKIR has been mentioned, DeepSeek, for instance, the Chinese version. We have a lot of them. The first question is, how do they make money? This is one of the main questions where this is about. I mean, to frame this kind of sites is meant to make money. This is one of my questions. Then this leads me to the second question. This is the problem of governments. It's the governments. Are they willing to try to share the values they conceive in the governments when they frame this kind of legal education, for instance, is crucial. Or Clerk, for instance, is crucial. I mean, what are the values they produce? And this leads me to the third question. This is what we are talking about is concentration of power. Concentration of legal power, concentration of educational power, concentration of cultural power. And it would be useful if you could cite, for instance, some controversial cases, such as public analytical processes. I mean, if you know legal education, I have written some controversial cases. It would be very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Any remark?
Maybe I can start from my side. It was the first question, how do they make money? There's let's talk with on the reports. I think in 3 months ago they might release a new report that they say almost like 95% of these AI projects just fail and 5% are just turned to be successful. And this is what I see it's in most of the companies. So I'm just doing lots of consulting from Turkey and globally. So what I see like almost like 5 to 10% of the projects we just taking it in operations. I mean, technology is there, but they want to use these technology operations. But of course, apart from that, so like a DeepSeek, ChatGPT, Gemini, and all the other like a big guys, what we call this techno-feudal system. So I think they say like a B2B to B2C. Of course, B2C sites are group, like a business to customers, so that people just like subscription based. But this is like a long, I think, discussion, in my opinion. But it's not like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I think the companies and also even governments, they now know how to make these things from the money, either CAPEX or OPEX, or just maybe in like a different game. And the second thing, what you're asking, like a data governance and AI governance. So these are the critical questions things we're asking. So data governance is already in how to say, established for most of the companies. I think this is the question that the university should be there at the same time. All like all the public groups, they are not there. Not only Turkey, but it's globally actually. From in Germany case, for example, they have like Datenschutz, the separation, but they don't really communicate with each other. Data governance, let's say, plus minus is there. AI governance is the critical question at the moment that we are all asking. We have tools we are using, but the thing is, when you inject more data, let's say the discussion of the LLM, for example, your accuracy is not getting higher, just getting broken. So this is what you have to measure all the time, and then at least you keep these things in a stable position. This is what they really worry about it. But yeah, this is something which is a matter of time, but it is a new subject. And concentration of the legal power, I mean, we have lots of experts in here. I don't need to comment on this one, but my opinion, what I see at least from this NGO point of view, once you have this technology in your operation, because you have lots of investments, so you don't share this technology or your legal rights even in many other subjects within other the country. It's not like 20 years ago. I think there are lots of faults everywhere. So they just not really working collectively. even the fact that there is this EU Act for the other like China operations. What I see that is, I think the financial, the traffic, how do they really go through from the overall the world, will show that how this concentration will be split. But this is what I just want to observe, just my subjective comment. That's all.
Yeah. Should work, right? There is also one other aspect. And that, in fact, worries me even more. I understand the questions that you have about concentration of power and so on, and I can see that. There's also something else. You heard it, I knew that AI is now so good that it can predict, let's say at the age, let's say 25, whether you get a particular illness at the age of 45 or 50, like cancer, like Alzheimer's disease, and so on. It will go on and on and on. The legal consequences of this are huge. Suppose you are 25 years old, you want a mortgage, you want a loan to buy a house. The bank demands a check. Will you be ill when you are 45? Will you run the risk that at 40 you will get cancer? And if the outcome of the report is you will get cancer at 40, you will not get a mortgage. And do we as lawyers really understand those consequences? That the information in the hands of disinformation, health information, in the hands of, for instance, financial institutions can have enormous consequences for mortgages, for insurance, and so on. Life insurance, when you will die of cancer when you are 40, forget it. You won't get it. And that worries me even more. Any question? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm the Scientific Director for the IALS, and it's my great pleasure to thank you all so much for this wonderful and rich presentation. And with your indulgence, Chair, I'm a little conscious of having kept people away from their coffee. I wonder if we perhaps might be able to carry over our questions and reflections into the subsequent panels for these colleagues and in the discussions over the course of the day, and perhaps adjourn now if we might, and continue with the next session after a very short break, if that might be possible, with your indulgence, Chair.
Thank you. Another question or remark? Yes.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Sjef Moral, practitioner and student of Professor ÖZSUNAY between 1991 and 1995. I would like to ask you a question to Professor Altan ÇAKIR, and this is about, the practitioners in legal industry are already using the AI, and they are able to feed these AI systems with their playbooks, meaning summaries of their experience of having worked in similar cases, and they develop these as playbooks and have the system also respond to many questions of the trainees of the firm. I would just like to ask if we go into the direction of this robotization of the legal practice, whereby even the negotiations may be run by robots, would there be an instance where an avatarization of experience may come into question, such as I've written 30 years of emails, legal opinions, and would it be possible to avatarize myself and simply license it for the future of the profession?
Yeah, it's a bit more philosophical questions. But when we see today one of the slides, there was like a drone and with the ships, and then the ships are just changing, like the drones can, the ships not really following the drones. What I see from my perspective, I think our generation will be passed away. So I think the new generation will see that as drones, they see that robots, and then they see that in the discussion with not replacement, but discussion with like a collaborative work with the human-computer science and human-computer interactions. So from that perspective, yes, there will be a transition state. if you remember the paper that I showed, I think they put the name is transformer, this algorithm. It's not just come by as ordinary word. Transformer means that you really transform to the new phases. I think what I see is new ages, like starting from the 17 years old to 25 years old, they are already in the path. So, and then when they reach to 30 to 35, they will be already the biggest practitioners to using these techniques. But in our case, it will be some kind of behavioral science. We will be, how to say, refused or just try to understand sometimes we just ignore these technologies. But in principle, from my perspective, yes, we will use robots for practitioners. I think they use it already. But it will be some kind of time for mistakes because we are in a still slope. The slope is not a plateau, which means that we should see some kind of mistakes and then some like they call reinforcement learning. So just if something correct, yes, if not wrong. So these steps will be much better within a couple of years. But like I mentioned, this new generations will be experiences the good ones. So we will see that probably something is not like we don't like or we like.
Last two questions. Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Can
identify yourself.
My name is Cansu Yamanlar. I come from Koç University. My title is Stakeholder Management and Policy Writer. And I have a question for Mr. Rona. There's a huge problem in our hands. As a policy writer, I want to learn about your approach to new taxonomy with AI alignment. Should we approach like domain-based engineering, marketing, finance, how to use AI in education, or should we have a ground rules for ethical rules and approaches? Thank you.
That would be really, really great, but we could talk about that during the break because I understand we're under time pressure. It's double. What I see happening at various universities, both in the Netherlands but outside of the Netherlands as well, is a course in the first year how to deal with AI. So basically you train your students already in the first year, first semester, in how to use AI. What is responsible use, what is irresponsible use. And second, you need, let's say, something like what I explained, what they are doing in Rotterdam, using a thesis logbook, so that students make transparent what they are doing. So you need both. But we could talk about it during the daily break any further. Thank you.
Yeah.
Firstly, I would like to thank you, all of you, for this very insightful and intriguing seminar. It was really helpful for me. I'm a senior law student. My name is Shahma. I'm a student here in Istanbul University Law School, and I also worked as an AI trainer last year for a couple of months for an AI training company. And there I actually was evaluating and scaling the prompts, and there often building up responses for them. And there I observed the fact that we actually in need of more people, more legal practitioners and more legal professionals in order to train the AI, because for example, I really don't know about other disciplines and other fields, but in legal systems, in legal questions, AI is really insufficient. For example, as a student, when I try to ask a question, when I try to impose a prompt, when I'm in need of, for example, finding a kind of response for any of my lectures, AI generally hallucinates its answers, and it really doesn't give me the correct answer. For example, in the Turkish legal system, we don't have trust law, and yet I do receive the response of trust law, but we don't even have that principle in Turkish law. So what do you think of the role of training the AI as legal professionals, and what do you think of the necessity of it?
Again, very briefly, and I'm happy to talk to you over the break. I do think that lawyers should get far more involved in this. But one of the problems that I see in the two working groups in which I'm sitting is that the practitioners are interested, but their knowledge is fairly superficial. And so we need actually lawyers who really understand what AI is about, but that group is relatively small. And most lawyers are only interested in AI in the sense like, can I work quicker? Can I work more efficient? Can I do more cases? And then it's a money problem. It's not a problem of substance. And that is wrong. And I think that is also what we should teach students. But I'm more than happy, like the person who asked the question before you, to talk about this over the break, because this really also worries me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Reluctantly, I have to close the session. But before closing, I would like to thank once again to these to the three presenters for their very well structured and informative papers. Secondly, I would like to thank the attendees who raised questions and made remarks to enrich the discussion. Last but not least, I would like also to thank the organizers to grant me to chair this session. So, thank you, all of you. I am closing the session.